Welcome everyone to TaskHuman Talk. I'm your host, Jamie Carroll, a fellow TaskHuman provider. And today we have our wellness professional, Monica McCollin. She is a yoga instructor, a nutritionist, and an herbalist. Welcome, Monica.
Hi, Jamie. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited to jam with you a little bit more on what you do. So, I want to dive in with asking you, what is your story? What led you into the path of nutrition and herbalism and wellness and yoga?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question. So, well, 4 scores and 7 years. No, no. It's actually, I think it's a great question. And it's funny because it's a little bit of a wonk, wonk, wonk. But I think, I'll try to bring a little bit of light to it. So, long story short, and please, Jamie, cut me off because I start to, and then just help me, please, okay?
Yeah, I'm timing you now.
Okay. And you'll be like, okay. So, all right. So, long story short, it was 2001, and I had this quarter size rash on my calf. And I went to the doctor, and I was fresh out of college, and I remember I had my first job, and all I was thinking to myself was like, oh my God, I've got this like ugly like rash on my leg. I can't wear a skirt to work and be cute. And that was pretty much the extent of it. And I go to the doctor, and they were like, it looks like you have psoriasis. And I was like, okay, just make it go away. Like, give me whatever it is, and I'll be back to wearing like a little skirt and I'll be cute again. And that little rash spread over my entire body with the exception of my face.
Wow.
Yeah. So here's the wonk, wonk, wonk. So that happened. And I tried everything that I could. And, I grew up already like living pretty well. My mother was really into supplements and smoothies, and that's one of my dreams, to have a little smoothie stand. So I was already eating pretty, living pretty well, but I wasn't very conscious of it until like my whole body was attacked by this thing. So long story short, I started to do my own investigations into yeah, thank God, different investigations into like what on earth I could do to try to help myself. But I mean, I had to get there because initially I was just like, have the doctors do whatever and just make it go away. And what I had was so bad that they took me to the National Institute of Health, and I was part of a grand round. So they had doctors from all over the world flying in to look, to observe, to see what was going on with me. And and I was like, well, leave it to Beaver. Of course, I have the like most randomest, most severe disease that anyone knew of. So long story short, at that time I was working on Capitol Hill, and no one knew that I was literally physically deformed because I just hid it from everyone. And I was seeing a therapist who suggested a Chinese acupuncturist. And that is pretty much how the whole journey started. I was doing some acupuncture treatments. I hired an herbalist of my own, and I started seeking professional help. And then my life just went in a completely different direction. I decided to go to school and study, and I became really like passionate about making sure that people knew that there were different options, and that they can kind of take more control over their health. And luckily, I'm all better. Every now and then I have like a couple little dry patches on my skin, but it's nothing. It was nothing like being covered from literally neck below, completely deformed, completely.
Okay. This is crazy because I obviously didn't know that you had such a big story with this.
Yeah, I know. I was like, are you sure?
But yeah, I had the intuitive hit to ask you this question, and I'm so glad I did. So when you were at NIH, what were they saying? Like, did they have a diagnosis for you?
No, they did not know. I mean, like they did not know. They had no idea.
Did they put you on like any medications or
Oh,
anything?
I was on lots of medication. So my medication history was like, people are like, are you against medications? I'm like, no, not necessarily, not at all. but to answer your question, I was on so many medications. I was taking Enbrel, which is a very expensive drug where you have to inject yourself twice a week. It's typically used for people with rheumatoid arthritis. I was taking very high doses of prednisone. I was taking methotrexate, which is a drug that helps with kidney transplant patients, essentially. So it helps repress your immune system. And I was doing the whole battery. I was going to full body light treatments for like 10 minutes or something, 3 times a week at the dermatologist office. And yeah, that's kind of how that started. And it's funny that you asked, because I remember I was at the dermatologist for so long. I had like maybe 3 different doctors out of the same practice, because the doctors would either retire or get a new job, and I was still like working with them. So yeah. So it was crazy. But the bright side to this wonk 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 story that I remember totally, and this was super super vivid in my mind. I had this doctor who's dermatologist who had really bad skin condition, I guess, severe eczema on her hands. And I had that as well. I said to her, I was like, listen, doc, I have to ask you, and this is my very last doctor. I'd seen 4 out of this practice. I was like, listen, doc, does the skin have what it takes to heal itself? That was my only question. And she was like, yes, the skin does have what it takes to heal itself. And she explained that it can, theoretically, but what you're dealing with, because I've been dealing with it for about 3 years at that point, is so severe. That's not, she wanted to manage my expectations, understandably. But I took that and I just ran with it. So it really opened it. I mean, I would have been a completely different person had I not dealt with like a physical deformity for like 4.5 years. Debilitating of my life. And I remember I would go to these, I had little baby goals, and I like to share baby goals, and I'm sure you do too with your clients, because you have to, when something's so huge, it's like, well, how do you tackle it, right? And my baby goal was in my light treatments, I would visualize, this was when I just started practicing meditation, I would visualize me wearing a sandal with strappy heels, because I couldn't do that. Like my whole leg was and foot was completely destroyed. I couldn't show any skin. So I would just focus on visualizing healthy skin cells, my skin, regenerating and healing. And I was just focused on my ankle and a strappy sandal. And that was kind of segued into the spiritual work that I later got into, and went heavy into the herbs and heavy into the nutrition and stuff. And it was literally just for selfish reasons, I guess. I mean, you could look at it that way, just to heal myself. But then I realized, I was like, oh, I have actually like a calling. I've been kind of called to do something, because I'm like, why, how, what in the world is going on?
I love this. Do you think that, I believe you said it was your dermatologist that you were talking to, when she told you that the skin can heal itself, that was like really powerful, it sounds like, for you. Like you were like, okay, I'm going to take that. I hear that piece and I'm going to go with that.
Exactly.
So what you heard was like, I can heal myself.
Exactly. Like I like to always say, and I think it's really helpful. It's like, create a story that's, it's like, woo, it's crazy. Because I don't want to be all wonk wonk, but it's crazy because I like to, something that I learned from one of my teachers when I was in grad school was create a story big enough to live in. And that really, really resonated with me, like, okay, and how your symptoms are your teachers, right? Wow. And that was something that I experienced firsthand. And I thought initially, because I was in Kenya before, and I came back and I was like, oh my goodness, I contracted a tropical disease. So that was the initial route that I went to look into, like, what in the world are these, like this rash that grew, and it didn't even stay the same, Jamie. That was the worst thing. So it, like, the way that it presented, it was like transforming. I was like, monster lady, so I have a lot of empathy for
Yeah.
yeah, I have a lot of empathy for how the body changes and how it can affect you psychologically when you're dealing with something that's, you know, chronic, that you're struggling with, that everyone can potentially see.
Yeah.
It's very different than,
Right.
you know,
Can
but not,
only
you know,
imagine.
any disease is horrible. But I say all that to say,
Mhm.
I say all that to say, I think it was a really big turning point for me to really kind of sit in and try to think about what was really going on. If my symptoms are my teachers, then what is this teaching me? Like, and what is actually happening with my body, especially once they ruled out that it's not a tropical disease.
Right.
So it's like, well, what is going on? And it's really, the story gets even crazier because I was going to the same therapist, right?
Okay.
And I said to her, and I was young, I was in my very early 20s at this time. And I said to her, I was like, you know, could you like put some like magazines in the lobby with like fashion and popular culture so I can have something to read instead of these like boring business magazines? And she did. She put an Elle magazine out in the lobby
Oh,
for
nice.
me. And just, you know, while I was waiting, you know, I just waited past the Economist and the Wall Street Journal. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this must be for me. Great. And I was like, this is perfect. And I opened it up, and I'll never forget it. I found an article about a woman who was describing her skin disease. She was a writer, and she was describing the disease very similar to what I had. It was the only time I heard that description. She said, my skin felt like raw salmon, and it was oozing, and it was very itchy, and it was very painful. And she details a story about how her sister had died tragically and suddenly, and that she thought that she was handling it well, and she had this horrible skin disease while this was all going on. And then that she went to the woods and she started writing, and it was only that when she went to the woods and started writing, she started to feel better. And that's when I made the connection of how my symptom is actually my teacher. And it's the way that I hold stress. You know, some
Yeah.
people, you know, you have to create a story big enough to live in. But, you know, some people hold stress and they might have a heart attack and drop dead, you know,
Right.
tragic. But for me, my first symptoms is my skin. So I realized that I was dealing with the stress of my own mother, who had recently been diagnosed with lymphoma at the time. And I had, you know, I had my ugly tear, ugly face cry
Yeah.
when I heard the diagnosis, but then I was fine. Like I was just, you know, I
Yeah.
was away at college, like after college, living, starting my life as a young adult. But I didn't realize that I was actually holding on to a lot of stress and fear and terror, and it was coming out in my skin. And it was
Wow.
literally because I asked, could you put some like fashion magazines in the lobby? And I happened to open up to the page while waiting. Isn't that crazy?
That is so crazy.
I
And
know.
not crazy because I'm very spiritual in the spiritual world as well. And so like paying attention to synchronicities and like what you're manifesting and the power of the mind. This is
Exactly.
it's also
Exactly.
amazing. Because even
Exactly.
like so you had to really come to terms with what it was that you were going through in order to like really heal yourself mentally, emotionally, and actually physically.
Exactly. Exactly. Because we're all, it's all connected. It's all
Yeah, it's
connected.
all connected. And
And
so
I didn't
even
know that.
yeah, and so many people don't really understand that concept. Have you read the book Mind Over Medicine?
I have not. I will add it to my list. Who's the
Oh
author?
my gosh. I'm trying to like glance over at my bookshelf right now
I'm
to
gonna
see if
write.
I can see it.
I have my little thing so I don't lose it. I'm gonna write it and then I'll ask you if you don't remember
Yeah,
the author after. Okay.
yeah, and I
Mind
can
over
grab it
medicine.
after. Yeah, and to
Okay.
anyone else listening to this too, it's a really great book just on the power of our mind,
Yeah.
right? And it's written by a doctor who was mainstream medicine and
hmm hmm
started kind of shifting and looking more into like the spiritual realm of things. But
Yeah.
because you said a couple of things a powerful thing. This is one of the things she touches on in the book is how we as coaches, right, should be so careful with the things we say to our clients because,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the power of planting a seed, like what if that doctor or that dermatologist has said to you, like, no, you can't heal.
Exactly.
Would
Exactly.
you have walked away thinking, it's like, nope, I can't heal my skin? And then could that have potentially made it much worse? You know
Well,
what I
it's
mean?
funny. No, I think, yes, I hear you and I agree. And I actually had a similar experience when it came to me getting off the prednisone. Because, as you may be aware, prednisone is not good for you, right? And
Yeah.
there's horrible side effects, and your osteoporosis, and your immune system is depleted, and
Yeah.
so forth, and moon face and swelling of the body. The side effects are horrible, and I was really, really worried about it because I'd been on it for a while, and it was the only thing that would like kind of clear up my skin, but then it wouldn't work. So it would work and then it wouldn't work. So I got really, really nervous about it. And this is when I started seeing a professional herbalist, which I soon became.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was telling her, I was like, I really want to get off this prednisone. And she recommended an herb um, to help wean me off of the
Oh,
prednisone. So it helps potentiate the effects of the steroids. So you only need to take a smaller dose. So I did that,
okay.
and I was taking less and less against my doctor's advice. And I don't
Mm.
recommend people to do things against their doctor's advice, but I just I just felt really compelled to do so because he said there's something that happens that's called the rebound effect. So if you take yourself off the medicine, then it can come back. You could have an exacerbated breakout worse than it ever was before. And that's enough to make you really not want to even try, right?
Right. Right.
You know what
Right.
I mean? You're like,
Yeah. Or like if you tried, you know what I mean? You have to have that support. So thankfully you
right,
had your herbalist supporting you and helping you and encouraging you, no, this is
right,
so again, you're not thinking in your mind the whole time like, oh my God, if I get off of this, it's going to be worse because you can literally manifest that. Like there is
right.
like the power of manifestation is real.
Exactly,
A lot of times
exactly,
we're just used to manifesting the wrong things, I think, right?
exactly,
So people don't even
exactly.
believe like, oh, there's no way I can manifest money or relationship or health
Oh, yes.
or
Oh,
whatever, but we do it all the time.
Jamie
So
Carroll, we have a lot to talk about in this short
I
amount of
know.
time. I didn't know that we were going to connect like this.
Yes.
Manifest, manifest.
Yes.
So I took that risk. Without the support, as you mentioned, and I never looked back, and I'm really grateful that someone introduced to me other possibilities of taking care of myself, um,
Yeah.
and how I could just be more involved and more empowered in
Absolutely.
my own wellness, rather than
Yeah.
kind of just giving it all away to someone else.
Yeah.
Um, and it changed my life. But speaking of books, have you read The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton?
No, I've heard of it. I'm
That's
writing
another
that
good
one down.
one. That's
Okay.
another great one. And it's on the same topic. It's on the same topic
Okay.
about,
I
the
love it.
mind and the power of the mind. And I'm not sure if you're into, and this one's a little hokey for the viewers, but I'm not
Okay.
hokey. I'm cool, but I like hokey things. I promise you. um, I really, really like Abraham Hicks. Have you heard about that?
Yeah. Love
That's
Abraham
so weird.
Hicks.
I love them.
Yes.
They're so
I love Abraham
weird.
Hicks. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And just the power of beliefs.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm, firm believer in that. I've seen it happen for myself. And I definitely like to, with the people that I work with, just kind of
Yeah.
invite them to uh, playing the game. Like, can you get what you think about? And you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, why don't you try to think a thought that might be more health positive, and more empowering,
Exactly. And
rather
that's the
than
thing too, what you said, like play with it. Just try it. Like what
exactly
is the
like
harm? Like let's just, take 3 months and see what you can do for yourself, Like
exactly
yeah,
exactly
I think that's great. I think that's great. So I kind of, this is actually good. You were just talking about herbalism and using herbs to kind of
yep
heal
yep
what you were going through. And I want to kind of segue into that. So you work with these herbs and tell us how you work with them. Because I've
Okay.
recently gotten into herbs a little bit more and done a little bit of research. I don't know much, but I'm super
Mhm.
interested in it.
Oh, awesome. Well, it's a
So,
people's medicine, so
I
it's there
know.
for us to use.
Yeah.
Um, I work with herbs. It's really interesting. I work with herbs kind of like a pharmacist works
Okay.
with drugs. And
Okay.
when I say that, or maybe not, I typically custom formulate
Okay.
prescriptions for the people that I'm working with. So
Okay.
I partner with various apothecaries and I tell them specifically this much of this much of this much of this much of this for a client. So it's
Oh,
so it's very customized. So it's considerably different than just recommending supplements or
right.
capsules or
Yep.
even individual tea blends, which I do sometimes. It's
Yep.
not
Yep.
completely um, not part of the practice, but I think the benefit of working with a professional is that they're able to customize for you. And I deal with people like, I guess I didn't mention it, but I deal with people that come with a range of health issues.
I was
And
going to
as
ask that
herbal,
next.
yeah, so as herbalists, we have to be really mindful of what our scope of practice is. And
Right.
legally, we do not treat disease, right? So we can improve the structure and the function of someone's body. So I look at like body systems. So I use herbs to support your reproductive system. I use herbs to support your nervous system. I use herbs to support your endocrine system. I use herbs to support your integumentary system, skin, and
Right.
your digestive system. So I use
Okay.
herbs to support those, and we can all play around and figure out which diseases actually correspond to that. Um,
Okay.
and I work primarily to like very holistically because the herbs are quite powerful, um, and it's not magic, right? So
Right.
it's unlike a pharmaceutical drug. It's not like you can like, okay, just take this. Like, Jamie, you say you have a headache. All right, well, Jamie, I'm going to give you this for your headache, and I'm going to give everyone else the same thing for their headache, because you are a particular temperature. You might be hot and dry, or moist and moist and cold,
Yeah.
so everyone's a different temperature. So I have studied a lot about the temperatures and the energetics, is kind of what we call it, of the plants, just like with food. And I try to match it's kind of like cooking. So I kind of match the energetics of the person,
Okay.
the energetics of the plant, and then the energetics of the disease state, if that makes sense. So, for
Ah,
example, headaches or migraines,
okay.
that's like a hot condition, right?
Okay.
So, depending on the person, that will influence the particular herb that I will recommend for them, because
Okay.
each herb, just like with food, has tons of different properties. So, something could be good for, migraines, but it could also be good for constipation, and it could also be good for allergies, right? So it's like it could
Right.
be good for 30 different things. So
Right. Right.
that's where the the practice and the training and the details come in, to
Yeah.
like knowing the different nuances, and then also making sure that the herbs aren't interacting with any other drugs that someone might be pharmaceutical drugs that someone might be taking, because there
Hmm.
are some contraindications. So being able to confidently and safely make those recommendations, um,
Yeah.
and really teaching
That's key.
people how to like know, and I'm sure all coaches do this, like to be able to like know how they're feeling, because if I give you something, I don't know that it's going to work. Do you know what I mean? I
Right.
think it might
Right.
work, and I
Hmm.
tweak things, based off
Right.
of like what you're able to describe to me about what your experience is while taking
Yeah.
this. So it's very important to help the people that I'm working with kind of learn to cultivate self-awareness and language, what their
Okay.
physical and emotional experience is like, so I can tweak and make adjustments as needed.
Do you have people that come to you or that ask about herbs that are try to think of the right word, not reserved, but maybe like, does this really work? Or like, what's the
Skeptical,
word I'm looking
skeptical.
for? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Kind of like, are you like, ooh?
Yeah. What do you say to
Um,
those people that come in?
it's really funny because most of the time the people that come to me, they are skeptical, but they have been drawn to me because they feel as though they're out of options. So
Hmm.
most of the people that I work with are coming out of an allopathic medical paradigm, or they're still part of that paradigm. They want to do something natural to complement what they're doing with their medical doctors. So there's more skeptics than believers, to be honest. I feel like more the people that are more on board with herbs aren't necessarily aware of the benefits of hiring a professional as much
Right.
because they think they could do it themselves.
Yeah.
And I encourage people to definitely experiment and
Right.
get your hands into the into the plant medicine, but they don't
Absolutely.
necessarily understand the difference between going to Whole Foods and speaking to the person that works at Whole Foods. Not to take anything away from any of these people because they're super, super bright and helpful,
Right.
versus someone with my background that has more of a clinical background that's able to actually
Hmm.
make sure that things are customized for you and safe for
Yeah.
you,
So people that are
dosage
really
and things like that.
experiencing, yeah, like a chronic issue in their health
Exactly.
or something like that, they are probably sick of maybe even being on medications or
Of
maybe looking just
course.
for other options to feel better.
Ex-
So those are the people that would go to
exactly.
you.
So it's
Yeah.
funny though, because it's like I attract people like me. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
not into herbs per se, but I wasn't like I never considered myself to be, ooh.
Right.
This was almost 20 years ago, but now look at me now.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Exactly. Once you start dabbling into it, like you just kind of go down the rabbit hole almost,
Exactly. Like
so to speak. Yeah, and you incorporate nutrition, I guess, into
exactly.
your coaching as well. So is
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
you're using probably just real whole foods, things like that?
Exactly, exactly. And a lot of people don't understand the importance of their diet. And but fortunately, one thing that I am seeing, which is really exciting, is that a lot of people are super super educated about nutrition these days. So there's a lot of like information out there that people are consuming, and I think most of the time when people come to me for nutrition, they're again looking for that customized experience, trying to figure out like what's the best thing for them and how to have a healthy attitude towards food, because there's often, like, unfortunately, like a really slippery slope between trying to, whether it be do a cleanse or
Right.
lose a couple extra pounds, and tipping the scale to having like kind of disordered eating habits. So I try to teach them how to make healthy choices.
Yeah.
It's not it's definitely plant-based, but I work with people that eat meat, and I don't
Okay.
try to I meet people where they're at, and I
Yes.
don't think one
Yeah.
diet is for everyone. And I
Right.
think the diet that you have, like, or you or I have right now, might suit us now, but when the weather changes, we might need
Yeah.
different things, or during different parts of our cycle, we might need different things, or, during pregnancy, we might need different
Yeah.
things, or just in general, like you
Yeah.
just might need different things in your body, and your body will kind of tell you that. So
Yeah.
I don't. I don't. It's definitely plant based, but
Okay.
it's pretty difficult to convince someone like my husband, for example, who is a Spanish man and he loves
Yeah.
his ham, and you know what I mean. Like he's like, what are you
He's not going
saying?
plant based.
Right, right. Well, but he, it's funny because I'm proud to say that he is going plant based, but it's
Okay.
not
Yeah.
because I put that squeeze. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's just
Mhm.
like introducing other possibilities of
Yeah.
what you can choose. So it was so cute today. He came home for lunch, and he made some pasta, like these little ravioli thingies that were whatever, from like a health food store, and he
Right,
put his little
right.
sauce on, and it was definitely fine. And he was like, "Do you want to try some?" He was like, "There's." It was so cute. He was like, "There's mushrooms inside."
Oh my gosh, I
It
love
was so
it. I
cute.
love
No, but it was so cute because it was like, and I was joking with a friend of mine. I was like, he came out to his mother. And she was like, "What do you mean?" She was like, "He told his mother that he was now vegan." And he didn't which is not true, but like, these are huge steps. Like a Spanish mom
Right.
is like, "But what about paella? Like, what do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
mean you're not going to eat this? They're used to me by now, they're
Right.
like," but he's like, "But my baby." So, but
Oh,
I
it's
think
like
that's,
planting those seeds,
exactly,
planting the seeds.
exactly. Just giving
Yeah,
people like things that they can choose, because I think a big thing
yeah,
about health and just being empowered is to feel empowered, right?
yeah.
So if someone's just like telling you what to do, then there's often led with like resistance. I don't know about you,
Mm-hmm.
Jamie, but I don't want
Mm-hmm.
nobody telling me what to do. Like, thank you very much. No
Yes,
thanks.
yes.
But if I feel
I
like
think
I'm
one of the things I like to tell people that I do, and it sounds like you could probably mirror this as well, is inspire, educate, inspire, and empower.
Ooh,
Educate
can
you,
I write
inspire
that
you, and
down so I
empower
can
you.
like
Yeah,
say that
yeah,
again? Because I'm not good with those things. Like, you're like,
yeah.
yeah, okay, that's great. That's very clear and concise. Inspire.
Educating people, right? So you're
Yeah, that's
educating
totally
people
it.
on food, the herbs that they need, just education, inspiring people to make a better choice, whatever.
Exactly.
And then empowering them. You're really putting it back
Exactly.
in their own hands. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, which is
That's totally
huge.
it. Because I remember um, when I was looking at your questions, and I'm glad that we're like kind of on script, but kind of off
Yeah,
script. It keeps it kind
right,
of
yeah.
fun. Um, and you were saying, do you practice what you preach? And the first
Yes.
thing that's such a good question. And the first thing I thought was like, but like, I don't preach. Like, that's not my
Mm,
thing.
I
Like,
love that.
I don't preach. And this isn't to take away from the many powerful voices that we see,
Right.
that on social media and just in the media in general, that do
Yeah.
preach, because a lot of the messages are really empowering, but that's not really my style, because I think everyone
Mhm.
has to kind of find their own way. And
Yeah.
I just try to introduce you to the tools that can allow you to make like better decisions, or informed decisions. It's up
Right.
to you what you want
Yeah.
to do. um, but if you have the information available to make informed decisions, uh, then when you're ready, you're going to be able to make those changes little by little.
Yeah.
But not because I told you
Absolutely.
to, not because I'm like, okay, you just paid me a bunch of money and I said da 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 da, and now you're like, okay, so now I'm no longer doing this. Like, it doesn't. That's not really.
Yeah.
I've never really seen effective behavioral change
Right.
happen as a result of that approach. So,
Yes, I agree with you. That's not really how the way that it works, that true change,
right, right,
really works. Yeah,
right,
absolutely. So I want to ask you, and I don't know if you have something, um, but right now, of course, we're filming this in the midst of COVID, and a lot of
right.
people are scared and worried about their immune health, for example. Is there an herb or anything that you would recommend for immunity, or is that too generic and it would have to be, more specific to the individual?
It's true. Exactly, exactly. It's definitely too generic. And, I feel really cautious about saying things in the context of COVID, not because
Yeah.
this isn't like a really great question, but because, again, social media, which I love, like I love social
Yeah.
media, but I also hate social media because there's so
I'm on
much
a
information.
Facebook hiatus right now, so I
Right, good
hear you.
for you. Good for you. It's like um, but the reason why I'm cautious about doing that, and it was funny because during quarantine, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna like do the unthinkable. I'm gonna write in my blog, which I like never do because I don't have time to do it. And I was like, I should write about like COVID and antiviral herbs and so forth,
Right.
and immune enhancing herbs. But the reason why I stopped doing, like, I didn't do that, was because I had a little voice in me, and just seeing like the images out there, is that I would never want people to think that this is something that if you take this herb, then you don't have to do X, Y, and Z to be responsible and to protect
Mm,
yourself from the virus. Like, it's not like taking this magic plant, and I do believe that plants are magic, I really
right.
do, is
Yeah.
going to give you like superhuman powers. So then go to the beach party and, or just like hanging out
Right. You still have to be
beforehand.
socially responsible.
Exactly. No, exactly, exactly. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm always nervous about speaking in the context of COVID, but I will share with you one of my favorite herbs um, that I think is really, and again, it's a generic recommendation, so it's not, but
Yeah.
I love it. It's called
Okay.
ashwagandha,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it does improve your white blood cell count, so it is good
Okay.
for immunity. It's the botanical name is Withania somnifera, and it's an Ayurvedic herb, and
Okay.
it's all about. Well, let me rewind. Adaptogens are the herbal, there is no pharmaceutical equivalent to an adaptogen. So
Okay.
it's a classification of herbs where the herbs help the body in the way that it responds to stress. Okay.
Okay.
So that's what
Yeah.
that's what makes it so special. So within the
Okay.
classification of adaptogens, there's all these different types of plants that can fall
Okay.
into that category. But ashwagandha in particular, I love is because it helps the body in relation to stress when there is issues with sleep involved without being a sedative.
Okay.
So it's something that one can take 3 times in a day.
Okay.
They're little capsules 3 times throughout the day, and it's not like they're feeling groggy or anything like that. Excuse me, but they
Calm.
will be able to have restful sleep because of the way that it works with your nervous system.
Oh, fascinating.
Isn't that
Okay.
amazing?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I think too, just with anyone who like gets scared of like being sick too, like
Hmm.
whether it's COVID or otherwise, there can be such a fear around like, oh my God, it could be so hyped up too, like when it does come to COVID, that people can be scared, like if they get sick, or my mom is sick, oh no, is she gonna die, right?
No, of
So you
course.
have that fear, and I think that like when we can get rid of that. Like that first, that fear is not going to serve us, right? And that
Right,
the negative thinking never. There's no
right,
good reason for that ever. So
right,
yeah, I love this. So ashwagandha. It sounds too like it promotes restful sleep.
right.
But it sounds
And
like it could all. Is it like
it
calming too? Can
yes,
it
it's
keep
a
you down?
nervine. It's a nervine,
Yeah,
so it calms your nervous system.
I love
So it's
that.
like there's many different classifications of, as I mentioned, adaptogens, but this one
Mhm.
I think it's really good because it has an immune boosting component, as most do,
Okay.
but it's particular for sleep, and that's
Awesome.
something that, as everyone already knows, that if you aren't well rested, that's already going to deplete your immune system, and then it starts a really vicious cycle as far
Yeah.
as your circadian rhythms and your cravings, for example,
Yeah.
and your blood
Yeah.
sugar,
I was
and
just
it
gonna
could
say that. Yeah.
exactly, so it could send
Yeah.
you off on this crazy roller coaster. So that's kind of another um, way that herbalists work with people. So
Okay.
it's not like, oh, you have a headache, here's the headache herb. It's like,
Right.
oh, okay, well, let me address this over here because this is going to involve this, in the
Exactly.
similar way that I described the why I think ashwagandha and sleep is like a good starting point for lots of
Absolutely.
folks. Mm.
Absolutely. And I could just talk to you all day about this stuff. I'm
I
like geeking out over here. Um,
know.
but I want to touch base on
Yeah.
real quick because we will have to get closing out here soon. But you created something called the Momo method? Am I
Uh-huh.
Momo method?
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What's that? What's the Momo
Okay.
method?
I know. What's the Momo method? That's a really good question too, because the Momo method is just like me. It's me. It's the way that I work with people. So Momo is my
Okay.
nickname.
Okay.
And someone gave me that nickname, and I was like kicking and screaming about it. Like when I was in college, I was like, don't call me that. And then it stuck. I was like, what? No, I was being introduced to like professionals. This is my friend Momo. And I was like, my God, my mother
I
would
love
kill
it.
me. Right. So,
Yeah.
when I decided to go into practice for myself, there's a certain way that you can be, basically, in ways that I didn't necessarily feel like I could when I was working in doctors' offices
Hmm.
in the past, right? So I had to be, you
Yeah.
just had to be. You just had to be, in a certain way. So you just had to be, you know what I mean? So,
I do.
yeah. So part of the Momo method was just me. It's not like this 3-step approach. It's just the way that I work with clients. So I'm 100% showing up authentically as myself all the time, and I try to encourage everyone else to do so. It's very transparent. It's very intimate. I like definitely dive in there because I think that is critical to the healing.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so that's the Momo method.
I
People are like,
love
what is
it.
the Momo method? I'm like, it's me.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great though. Like the way
uh-huh.
you coach who you are. That's perfect.
Exactly.
I wanted to see, okay, one of the things you mentioned on your website is
Uh-huh.
lifestyle hacks for vibrant living. And I love that.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
there
yeah, yeah.
any lifestyle hacks you want to leave us with today?
Ooh. Okay. I know. I'm like, let me think. That's a great question, Jamie Carroll. Jamie Carroll, you're stumping me. Um, no, I think something that everyone can do, or something that I try to do, going back to practice what you preach, even though I don't preach, is try to do something every day to honor yourself and your ancestors. And that can look very different for, everybody. It could be as simple as, getting fresh air. I come from like a long line of Black lady divas. So,
Yeah,
so for me, like honoring my ancestors is like making sure that, I'm looking kind of nice, like just do a little
right.
something, put my little mascara on, to honor
Yeah,
my ancestors
yeah,
and to honor myself. So making sure that
right.
I have that time to like sit on the floor and breathe and unplug, and it could look different for everybody, but making sure that you choose one thing every day where you can honor yourself and you can honor your ancestors, so you can kind of just keep bopping on through the world.
I love that. And something I want to leave all the listeners with too, that I was a takeaway for me just listening to you share your story and what you do is to cultivate self-awareness.
Yeah.
Really learn to be self-aware and develop that intuition. And you may need to hire someone to help you with this,
Hmm.
but really becoming more and more self-aware of what's going on with you, your body, your emotions, what you're feeling, what's showing up,
Hmm.
because that's really where like the real healing can start to take place. And
Hmm.
that's sort of like the lesson that I'm hearing you say, right? And I
Hmm.
hope that's right.
No, I mean, I don't believe in
Yeah,
right and wrong, so you nailed it. No.
yeah, I love it. Yeah, so okay, so lifestyle hacks we're going to leave you guys with. Do something every day to honor yourself and your ancestors, something for you,
Hmm.
and do something fun too. Let's throw that one in there.
Of
And then just
course.
learn, be self-aware, tuning
Mhm.
into the emotions you're feeling, even physical pain, whatever it is that's going on, tuning into that and cultivating and creating more and more self-awareness for
I
yourself.
love it. I love it.
Yay. Well, thank you, Monica. It was so fun chatting with you today. We'll
So
have to
fun
do this
chatting with
again.
you. Yes,
I feel another episode coming
I
on.
hope so.
Yes.
Thank you,
And
everyone,
thanks
for
all of you
listening.
guys. Yeah, thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you next time.